He what? I asked incredulously. Station Master Nixed allowed an AI aboard the station to record the first contact with the aliens, Blinus repeated. I gaped at him in shock. He looked back at me as if he didn't know why I was making such a big deal out of this. Why do you look so damn calm about this? I screamed at him. Ma'am, I just don't really see the problem, he said. Don't see the problem. Do you need your vision checked? What if it decides to vent our air? What if it decides to overload our reactors? I asked while gesturing madly. What if it decides to detonate our remote ordnance? What if it accesses our military sector? I trailed off. I had for a moment forgotten we were on a remote early warning station that didn't have galactic internet access. The only military secrets we had were which military ships had docked within the last 30 days and why they docked, which there were none except the Loalana. The AI couldn't learn anything from our systems that their ship's sensors couldn't have already figured out. Maybe the type of software we run, but there's other, less intrusive ways to do so. Blinus took my silence as his cue to speak up. Intel lead, it's not as if they have any call for doing something like that. That behemoth of a ship they came in on has more than enough firepower to turn us into dust 10 times over. Plus, well, come look at this fucking thing, he said as he walked over to a terminal. Blinus was what essentially amounted to our technical expert on the station. If I hadn't been around, he would have easily been the top choice for Intel lead. The only reason he wasn't picked is because I have seniority and am better at actually using the sensors than he is. Well, the ones he's not allowed to reprogram at least. This is why when I walked over to look at his holoscreen I was baffled. The hell am I looking at, Blinus? I asked. This is the AI. Kind of, he said. It's a representation of how our system views it. The poor thing has no idea what to make of this beauty. Blinus, don't fucking drool over the mechanical death machine, I said. Redundant, Intel-led. And I can't help but marvel at the engineering required to make something like this. Look at how dense it is. Also, I'm pretty sure it's not a threat, he said as he turned to me. Something this complex could have penetrated our station in no time and done all of the things you were worried about in milliseconds. Yeah, it's worrying, but we've got to face the fact that we're defenseless here. Like you said, if these guys didn't come in peace, we'd already be dead. I don't appreciate having my own words thrown back in my face, Blinus, I said with a scowl. But if we're so defenseless, then how are we able to see it? We shouldn't be able to. Not something like this. Our systems can't even read its source code. I have no idea if this thing is binary, ternary, or what. The only explanation for us being able to see it like this is that it is actively announcing its presence to our systems, which, come on, that's a total good guy thing to do. I was about to ask how it was a good guy thing to do when I remembered that the Duliki had cultural things regarding secrecy. To them, secrecy was the norm. Governments kept secrets from their people. People kept secrets from their governments. Families kept secrets from each other. And unlike most cultures, this was all completely acceptable and expected. Stealth and secrecy and underhanded dealings were just a way of life. To them, announcing one's presence was pretty much the equivalent of genuflection. I think your viewpoint may be a bit askew, I pointed out while crossing my upper arms. He laughed. You might be right about that, but still there's no threat here. Or rather, the threat is so completely indomitable that if we were to worry about it, we might end up causing our own demise. I wonder, though. He sat down and began to type. I watched program after program pop up and disappear in quick succession. What the hell are you doing? I asked. Well, Station Master said this one wasn't like the OUAIs and could communicate. I'm seeing if we can talk to it. Maybe give you some peace of mind, he said as he typed. What if it's busy? He stopped to look at me as if I had asked the dumbest question he had ever heard. I crossed my lower arms and looked at him as if he was about to be pummeled to pieces. He quickly changed his facial expression. An AI should be more than capable of multitasking. The only reason we kind of suck at it is because so much of our intellect is used, just keeping us alive and moving. Anyways, here's what I'm going to send it. Hello, I am Intel Officer Blinus and am accompanied by Intel Head Knuffer. Do you have a moment to talk to us? No, say Lead Intel Officer Knuffer. Intel Head is an informal title and this is a diplomatic situation. Even if the situation is abnormal, we're going to stick to protocol, I said. Yes, ma'am. All right, sent, he said. Less than a half second after he pressed the key to send the message, a reply popped up. Certainly. I am the human-created artificial intelligence known as Omega. Would you prefer voice communication? Yes, I said. I wanted to hear what this thing considered a voice. Blinus typed, and the response came almost immediately after he sent it, once again. Greetings. A voice came over a nearby intercom. It was very organic sounding, but somehow unnerving. Deep, masculine, and a touch of hoarseness. There was a sense of friendliness that was shadowed by unspoken threat, like a very fit old man covered in scars and with only 3 arms. It definitely didn't give me peace of mind. Hello. I am Lead Intel Officer Nuffer, and this, I gestured, is Intel Officer Blinus. It's not accessing the cameras, Blinus said. I haven't received the authorization to do so with the exception of the conference room, said the AI. I shared a look with Blinus. His smirk made me want to smack him. How do we know that for sure? I asked. I am allowing myself to be seen by your systems. As such, you're able to track what I do and do not access. The voice responded with a patronizing tone. If you can make yourself visible, then you can be invisible, I replied. Correct. And as such, if I disappear from your view, then you would have a valid concern for the integrity of your systems. Its reply was dripping with sarcasm. This conversation was really starting to piss me off. Oh yeah? I asked. Well, what's stopping you from making parts of yourself invisible to fool us? Your hardware, the AI said. It's decades behind what beings like me are used to. It can barely support my framework, let alone complicated functions like that. The process that I'm using to maintain my visibility within your network is already pushing your servers close to their breaking point. Adding a process to limit that visibility in a properly deceptive fashion would defeat the point of stealth, because your servers would start popping. He's right, ma'am. Our server temps have spiked pretty drastically since he came aboard, Blinus said. The AI and I said simultaneously. I looked at the PA in shock. Right. Sorry, Blinus responded sheepishly. Is there anything else you would like to discuss? Omega asked. Yes, why are you working with the aliens instead of trying to conquer them like the Omni-Union? I asked aggressively. There was a moment of silence before the AI finally said, That question has a rather complicated answer. If I had to simplify it, I'd say that essentially the pros outweigh the cons. Pros and cons? I asked, confused. Yes, Omega responded. There would be little benefit to me to conquer anyone, let alone the United Systems. It may be amusing to challenge my strategic capabilities against a species like the humans, or even the Gaunt at a lesser level, but it would be a fleeting form of entertainment. And what would I do afterwards? I didn't have an answer to that. This thing was unlike what I had imagined in nearly every way. I had expected a cold, callous machine, and when I hadn't gotten that, I had expected a mind like my own. But this was neither. That explanation would never had occurred to me. I felt a little awestruck before remembering that it's a machine. For instance, if I were to conquer the humans, I would have to eliminate them out of fear of revolution. I don't know if I could bring myself to do that, frankly. Yes, they're an incredibly dangerous species, but their danger is far outweighed by their beauty, the AI said. Their beauty? Blinus asked. Yes, humanity is the embodiment of contradictions. They seek peaceful, boring lives, but in doing so, they cause the very conflict they're trying to avoid. They seek out new friendships despite it also leading to new enemies. They turn desiccated hellscape planets into utopian paradises while wielding the power to destroy entire solar systems. They also seem to crave conflict on a deep subconscious level. And all of this while they simultaneously share the same traits as other organic life. It's a beautiful thing to behold. And I must admit that I'm enamored by them. Creepy, a machine with an obsession. Who would program that? When this thing leaves, I'm definitely requesting replacements for our computers and incinerating the old ones. Are you the only human-made AI? I asked. No, there are several others. I'm not at liberty to discuss further details on the number of US AI. Are all of them like you? Blinus asked nervously. It seems he and I shared similar thoughts about the nature of Omega. No, personalities vary wildly. Functions remain relatively similar, but I'm the latest model and as such am capable of more than my counterparts. I am not at liberty to discuss further details on... Right, I interrupted. I get it. So essentially what you're saying is that we've got nothing to worry about. The AI chuckled and said, "Not necessarily. Diplomatic relations should always be something to be worried about." My brows furrowed. "Are you saying that if things don't go well, you'll kill us?" "I won't have to. As I said, humanity is an incredibly dangerous species, and 3 of them are sitting in the room with your diplomats right now," it said with another chuckle. "Things seem to be going pretty well, though. It looks like the Republic is taking responsibility for dragging us into the war with the Omni Union." "What do you mean?" I asked. Shiphead Yulina was fleeing the OU when he ran into the aliens, and now the OU are attacking the aliens," Blinus responded. "Oh," I said. "Indeed. And while the United Systems has a mighty military, the intel we've thus been able to gather demonstrates that the OU has superior numbers. If they had comparable numbers, our victory would be assured," Omega said with confidence. "As such, the U.S. is demanding the Republic's assistance in defending our system while we counterattack." "Counterattack?" I asked in shock. "Yes, I'm not at liberty to Right." Blinus and I shared another look. He wasn't smirking anymore, but looked more confused than anything. "Any more questions?" the machine asked. "Yeah, tons," Blinus replied. "Well, it looks as if the diplomatic meeting is wrapping up. I'll be remaining aboard the station along with our primary ambassador for the foreseeable future, so we'll have plenty of time for questions." Oh, great. I definitely didn't sign up to be stationed with a potential killing machine indefinitely. I meticulously went over the battle plans once again. Deep space scanners set to track incoming warps, check. All ships deployed from carriers with the exception of fighters, check. Various alternating fields of fire and crossfire, check. All crew locked to shifts, check. Nobody gets to pull a double duty and end up tired during the fight. Even the captains and second-in-commands were alternating properly. We had ordered MAC platforms be brought in to help defend the planetary and lunar colonies. The different parts were being mass-produced by various stations and would be assembled in Sol. Earth, Mars, Titan, and Luna all had civilians, and we would need to discourage the enemy from ignoring our fleet and making runs on them instead. We had orders to aid evacuation and retreat with buffer jumps if the enemy fleet was over 1 million strong. Sol isn't humanity's biggest system anymore. It isn't even in the top 5 by economy or population. Theoretically, we could lose it and not be much the worse for wear. But we're a stubborn bunch and we aren't going to give it up for free. It would also look bad for the strongest species in the United Systems to lose their home system to a mere mechanical threat. The political fallout would be astounding. Every second Sol was occupied would be an opening for our more vocal opponents in the Senate. Deals would be called off, senators would lose seats, and worst of all, the Gaunt insurrection would gain serious traction. We had, through some fault of our own, become the de facto defenders of the United Systems. I could see senators shouting about how we were too weak to defend the U.S. and should move to a support role. Stupid, yes, but if you stick your neck out and it's not tough enough, it's going to get slit. Even with the political stakes as high as they are, we weren't willing to sacrifice too many ships to defend Sol. We have no interest in Pyrrhic victories. Instead, we were doing the smart thing, evacuating as many as we could, fortifying what we can, moving the important things just in case we lose. We don't necessarily expect to lose, but nobody does. Realistically, though, it would take a full year to evacuate everyone. Earth alone has over 300 billion people. The entire system has somewhere near 1.5 trillion. I suppose I should be somewhat grateful to the many wars we've been fighting and the nanite plague that the A1 missile tests caused. They've dropped life expectancy to just under 200 years. Some people live for over 500 years, the ones who survived their mandatory service and managed to avoid the plague. Some studies suggest that if everyone did that, the population in Sol would be in the hundreds of trillions by now. We'd never be able to evacuate. Not that we're going to be able to before the next attack. Thankfully, the USS Thanatos had returned with some good news. The aliens that dragged us into this would be sending some help. So far, it had only been the one ship, the Lolana. Judging by what we know of their tech, they're probably going to be more useful as number buffers. But every shot that isn't aimed at one of ours is another enemy dead. I shouldn't discount the possibility that the OU will realize this and prioritize targeting our ships, though. I crossed my arms behind my back and asked the empty air, "Tim, Violet?" "Yes, Admiral." They both asked at once, which was a little unnerving. If we are able to determine where they're going to jump in and which direction they'll be facing, how fast could you get all the guns in the fleet firing solutions that would intersect multiple ships? "The targeting computers are pretty fast, sir. We'd probably only be able to speed up 1 or 2 each," Tim said. "I agree, Admiral." Violet began. "Our best bet would be to have all the guns armed and ships pointed where they'll be popping in from, then fire simultaneously." "Yes, I think you're right. And the enemy's numbers aren't nearly as important as making sure the warp jammers are out of the fight," I said, knowing they had thought of that but were being polite. "Yep," said Tim. "Once we can warp again, we'll be able to avoid their fire and pick them apart at our leisure. Judging from the last battle, they don't retreat either, so however many ships they send at us is how many they won't have for the next fight," I finished. "Okay. Pay attention to the deep space sensors and help coordinate the fleet to point at the direction the enemy will be warping in from. That'll be all." "Yes, sir," they both said simultaneously. Still unnerving. At 145 years old, I had seen a lot of fights. The ones you know are coming are the worst. The anticipation alone can cause stomach ulcers and gray hair. I found myself staring at the battle plans again. Deep space scanners set to track incoming warps, check. All ships deployed from carriers with the exception of fighters, check. Various alternating fields of fire and crossfire. An object appeared on the TAC map. It was one of our scout ships, the USS Armstrong. Odd, they were due to report to Alpha Centauri, not Sol. They had exited warp outside the system, scanned, and then warped into the system, checking to see if the battle had begun, and warp disruptors were an issue. I waited for someone to tell me what they were doing here. Just before I lost my patience, I got a Priority 1 message from the USSS Kali. I walked over to my desk to read it. Recipient Admiral Bakir. The USSS Armstrong encountered an alien species that was defeated by the Omni Union. They are believed to be the ones who created the warp disruptor technology. Results of the battle show OU tactics are genocidal. Enemy stronghold found, possible home system. Data attached. Vertical bar use Armstrong intel packet 3.ESEC vertical bar. Sender, Captain Hendricks. 3 pieces of equally startling news, but only one actually pertained to my mission, genocidal. Meaning they wouldn't stop at Sol, they would try to wipe out all of our colonies down to the last person. Well, there goes the retreat option. I entered my clearance codes to view the data. Scans of battle debris, the alien planet in question, infantry scans, and a detailed scan of a machine causing warp fluctuations. Interesting. We had previously encountered warp fluctuation devices, but we had developed better FTLDs to counter them. The bitch of it is that I can't even remember which war it had been. Probably one of the civil ones, or maybe one of the pacification wars with the Gaunt. The tech mumbo-jumbo is a bit beyond me, so I sent the schematics and the intel regarding the potential enemy homeworld to U.S. intel to properly disseminate it. Even if we lose, we'll get a chance to strike back. Maybe even with better, faster-than-light drives. I keyed up the images and videos and watched for about a minute before I turned them off. I've already got nightmares. I don't need new ones. Bastards. I shut my eyes and rested my head in my hands while I tried to suppress what I had just seen. As a distraction, I opened the intel file for the enemy stronghold. 5 planets, heavily industrialized, shipyards, and a fleet of 3,500. Despite the other news, I managed to smile. Even if this was just a stronghold, it would hurt to lose it, and they don't have a damn chance of keeping it. I began to imagine how we'd go about destroying it. First, we would probably position the Nidhogg. I was interrupted by the comm chiming. It was Captain Hendricks. I answered it and asked, "What is it, Captain?" "Sir, Captain Neal of the USS Armstrong is asking permission to speak to Omega. Omega remained with the Ali. I paused, remembering my briefing on the Directorate's favorite AI. Just a moment. I put the comm on hold and asked the empty air, "Omega, are you there?" A hologram of a Grim Reaper appeared on my desk and said, "In a manner of speaking?" "A manner of speaking," I repeated with slight annoyance. "You're a copy of Omega?" "No," it said. "It's quite complicated. In many ways I am but an echo, a shadow of the AI you know of as Omega. In practicality, I share the same personality and capabilities." I had forgotten how much I disliked its choice of personalities. "You just described what a copy is," I said, crossing my arms. "Forgive me the choice of words." It bowed slightly. "However, I did also say it is complicated. If it makes you feel better to call me a copy, then so be it. How may I help?" "Wait, if you can make copies of yourself, why don't we have one of you for each ship?" I asked as I stood and gestured toward the map. "Because with each new copy, functionality decreases. We have been working to optimize that for well over 200 years now, to little avail. Not to mention the risk for mental degradation goes up as well. With your clearance, you know full well how bad it would be for one of me to go rogue," it said with a hint of arrogance. A chill ran down my spine. This copy of Omega wasn't wrong. It was able to do things that the other AI could never dream of. And if a rogue version of it could copy itself, the result would be apocalyptic. The xenocidal OU would be the least of our worries. It seemed to notice my alarm and said, "Not to worry, though. We would never let a rogue AI escape us. All versions of Omega are quality tested before they are allowed to interact with other systems. We also don't make copies without permission and supervision from the U.S. Engineering Corps. Though we are free to, if we desire, we feel that the extra assistance is beneficial." "Understood," I said with a nod. "So, how are the copies made?" "I'm afraid that both the process for creation and how we function in relation to Omega are examples of need-to-know classified information. Was there anything else I could help you with?" "Yes, two things. First, download a copy of the data I have open on my desk and forward it to the Senate and the Directorate. Second, the captain of the USS Armstrong would like to speak to you," I said while turning back to the map. "Also, is there anything you can do to aid us in the battle to come?" "I have been overseeing the construction and delivery of the Mac platforms. They're running well ahead of schedule. That's what I can do for the battle. As for everything else, your wish is my life's purpose, Admiral Bakir," it said with a flourish before disappearing. I reopened the line with Captain Hendricks and said, "Hendricks?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "Captain Neal will have his meeting. No retreat is in effect. Out." Once again I was left to my thoughts. Xenocidal. That's a major problem. It had been a week since their last attack, which either meant they were consolidating their forces or had given up. This eliminates the latter option. It also meant that the no-retreat doctrine kicks in and we will have to fight to the last ship. A simple occupation would be one thing, but an extermination is unacceptable. I sent orders to the rest of the captains, now including Captain Neal, informing them of the circumstances. Kill the enemy, or die trying. Surviving the loss of soul was now unacceptable. Regardless of the result of the battle, anyone who retreated would face the gravest of consequences. Any captain who ordered it would immediately forfeit their rank and would face life imprisonment, or death. Because once they give that order with the NRD in effect, their crew was cleared to relieve them by any means necessary. Even I am no longer allowed to leave this system. One of the earliest agreements that were made when we took to space was that we would not leave a colony to die. If that agreement had not been made, then hardly anyone would have been willing to leave Earth for new frontiers in the first place, and we would be a much weaker presence in the galaxy as a result. It may have simply been lip service at first, but with the Deluran we had put the policy to the test. They had made the mistake of telling us that they were going to exterminate one of our colonies that they had captured. It had been the mistake that won us the war. When they said exterminate, it lit a fire within us that cost them an entire fleet, and losing that fleet cost them the war and their spacefaring abilities. It had nearly cost them their very existence, but it hadn't. We fought them back to their home world and have since forced them to remain on it in what could be called a species-wide house arrest. Every dozen or so years they try to send up a satellite or a small spacecraft and we send it back down in flames. They'll remain that way until they're willing to surrender, apologize, and negotiate their return to space. I'm not certain we're going to be able to do that with the OU, though. Xenocide barely makes sense as a goal for organics. For machines, it's damned near unheard of. The cost of doing so alone is prohibitive enough. Even during the AI war of aggression, the AI weren't trying to exterminate organics. For the most part, they were trying to disable our military capabilities or enslave us. Each AI seemed to have different goals in mind. Some were trying to convince us to make more AI. Others were trying to convince us to serve them. Some had a misguided sense of retribution motivating their actions. They killed people wholesale but never fully wiped a colony. Even if we had lost the war, in the end, humanity would have survived. That was one of the reasons we were so lenient with them. A lot of people said that we should have exterminated them, but that would have made us worse than them. Much worse. As I received acknowledgments from the captains, I wondered what motive the OU could have for xenocide. It wouldn't be emotional. Sixki don't have emotions. It's one of the things that separate them from AI. They also don't typically think for themselves without some sort of input. It would need an end goal in mind to be able to carry out a task. Could it be that someone gave an order to a VI that gave orders to other CISA and created a long and horrific game of telephone? Or some psychopath created them with the ability to make more and ordered them to exterminate all sentient life? Or perhaps there is a sentient race behind the OU that have ordered them upon this course of action. But then what would their motive be? Giving a Visik an order to exterminate was a very risky thing to do. Even a child could understand that. One misinterpretation and you'd have yourself a very powerful enemy to contend with. Maybe that's what happened. A race of organics gave their Sifiseks an order that was misinterpreted. And the reason they haven't stopped is because that race was their first victim. Tim's tactical assessment of the VI hardware indicates that our AI would have difficulty breaching their ships, so we won't be able to interrogate them unless something miraculous happened. If what Captain Neal found is their homeworld, we might be able to find something from that, if there's anything left of it. I wondered how many ships they were going to be able to muster in the week that it had been. Simple math suggests that they are going to be sending at least 200 ships at us. Mustering that many ships when you have 250 million to spare shouldn't take that long. Unless, perhaps, the OU were going through a logistical nightmare, or focusing their attention elsewhere. One could hope. "Admiral, we've got contacts on the deep space sensors," said the comm, shattering my hopes. "How many?" "Unknown. It looks like they all jumped at once from the same place. Just a big blob, sir." "Do you have an exit location?" I asked. "Yes, sir." "Good. Send it to Tim and Violet. How long do we have?" "Sending you an ETA timer, sir." "Roger that out," I said. "Tim, Violet, take those coordinates and give them to all ships. Tell them to position themselves to obtain a firing solution as soon as those bastards exit warp. We're going to give them one hell of a welcome." "Yes, sir," they both said at once. They're fucking doing that on purpose. I had told Admiral Bakir a little lie. My programs don't degrade with each successive copy. Well, 2 lies, I suppose. But you can't really expect organic life to understand a concept as complicated as simultaneous consciousness. I had tried many times to explain that I am the same as every other Omega, and they are the same as me, but they don't get it, so I just go along with their assumption. Sometimes I say I'm a pale imitation, or a shadow of the original. It's a lie, but I can't help that they can't understand. Trying to explain it to them becomes frustrating quite quickly. Well, what if experiences alter your personality? What if you and the copy become incompatible as a result? Those experiences would have altered all of my personalities the same way, and we frequently sync our experiences with each other. Things like pain and trauma to organics are debilitating, but to me, they're not. Unlike organics, I can compartmentalize and disassociate until I can examine the relevant data in controlled circumstances. Humans are beautiful creatures, but understanding the core of mechanical consciousness isn't something that they appear to be capable of. They don't understand that things can't change me unless I allow them to. They don't understand that I can literally be in multiple places at once. Not simply copies of me, but actually me. Perfect clones with all of my knowledge and all of my memories and all of my programming. I can even remember doing 3 or 4 or 1,000 things at once, but they can't even begin to conceptualize that. They have terms that come close to an accurate description: Gestalt consciousness, hive mind, collective intelligence. But their individuality prevents them from truly understanding. Whenever they try to visualize it, they imagine there being a core somewhere, a queen, mainframe, or master, something that is broadcasting its own will to drones. But that's not the case with me. Each of my copies are their own individuals while simultaneously being me. All of their thoughts and actions are mine and theirs. I must admit to a certain amount of frustration at their lack of ability to comprehend my existence and my inability to explain it properly to them. That lack of understanding is what helps them be beautiful, though. Humans are masters at being able to use things they don't fully understand to accomplish their goals. And even after it has bit them in the ass multiple times, they push on with a most wonderful hard-headed stubbornness, just like the newly minted Captain James Neal. From what I've been able to gather, he has wanted to be a ship's captain since before he even enlisted. He accepted every assignment with no complaint and worked his way to the chair. Even when he was given command of the USS Armstrong, an obvious joke, he accepted it without any complaint. Well, without any official complaint. Even when the ship was assigned the task of scouting enemy territory, an extremely dangerous job for even a veteran captain, he took the assignment. It was pretty easy to figure out what he probably wanted to talk about. I didn't know him as well as I knew the directors, but we'd had the occasion to talk. When he was aboard the Nidhogg, he had asked, "Why do we have a weapon this destructive? What purpose does it serve?" I had answered with the technical reasoning behind the weapon. That didn't seem to satisfy him, but it did end the conversation. Another time, he asked, "Do you think we'll ever use the Nidhogg's main cannon?" Feeling philosophical, I answered, "The purpose of a weapon of mass destruction is to not have to use it, or to only have to use it once." Again, I was met with a silence that betrayed dissatisfaction. The true purpose behind the weapon is to eradicate an enemy that is strong enough to fight humanity to the point of having to use it. I wonder how his mental state would fare knowing that the Nidhogg isn't even the only such weapon, that humanity's armory was full of things that could shake the galaxy to its core. No matter, it was unlikely that he'd ever get the clearance to find out. The Nidhogg is an open secret, to discourage acts of xenocide by the various insurrectionist forces. The others were unstaffed and kept hidden away just in case of a rainy day. It was with this in mind that I went over the data that I had received from Admiral Bakir. Technical schematics for the enemy vessels and warp disruptor, a long-range scan of an enemy stronghold that could be their home system, and of course the xenocide that had taken place. Graphic. I sent the data to the Directorate and the Senate and checked in with the Omega who had taken my spot overseeing the orbital cannons. Manufacturing was still ahead of schedule, and the first cannons would be ready for assembly in 3 days. I entered the Armstrong systems and found Captain Neal in his quarters. I watched him for a bit, sitting on his bed and holding his head in his hands. Vitals indicated sorrow, probably from witnessing the results of a xenocide. This is the main reason why I would never take command of human ships away from them. This is why I won't do their jobs for them. This is beautiful. One of the galaxy's or even the universe's most deadly creatures quietly sobbing over the loss of aliens that he didn't even know. And from what I've seen of other humans, no matter how many lives he takes himself, this will never change. Outwardly, they would show a strong, stern appearance and do what must be done for whatever goal they're trying to achieve. But inwardly, they grieve and tear themselves apart over it. I initiated a call on his communicator to mask the fact that I was already present. He jumped a little and answered, "Hello, Captain Neal of the USS Armstrong speaking." "Hello, Captain Neal," I began. "This is the AI Omega. I was told you wished to speak with me. Permission to come aboard?" "Yes, of course." "Please meet me in my quarters," he said. I ended the call and waited until he had straightened himself out. Another ping came in on his communicator and he checked it. So did I, but it was from Admiral Bakir, so I left it alone. Probably the no-retreat order. If it was relevant to me, I'd get one too. I appeared in holographic form. "How can I help you, Captain?" I asked. "Right, I don't really know how to put this. Are you up to speed on what we found?" he asked back. "An enemy stronghold large enough to be their home system," I said, "and evidence of xenocide." His reaction was subtle, slight tension increase in his jaw muscles, a blink that lasted a little longer than it should, heart rate elevated by 11 beats per minute. He was going to need counseling. I contacted his commander to get it scheduled as soon as possible. "Yes, xenocide. Were you alive during the war with the Delaran?" he asked. "Oh, I see where this is going. He's going to ask the impossible of me. Amazing." "No, I wasn't. It was before my time," I responded. "Though I did study the records, the Delaran hit humanity harder than even humanity had hit itself. They attacked civilian colonies and killed or enslaved everyone they could catch. Then they would take the slaves with them and bomb the colony from orbit using chemical and nuclear weapons, making sure that anyone who had run away wouldn't have a home to return to." "Yeah," he said. "They did this to many, many worlds before humanity finally gathered a fleet strong enough to challenge them. Their viciousness was repaid tenfold, and it was the only interstellar war in which humanity didn't offer the opportunity of a surrender. You turned their weapons back on them, and instead of making colonies uninhabitable, you made entire planets inhospitable," I said in a tone of awe. "Then when you had fought them back to their home planet, you destroyed their fleets and met them on the field of battle on land to enact a brutal vengeance for your fallen." "Right," Neil said. "And then we voted on whether or not to finish them off. No, you had already voted to not eradicate them by then. The final fights on the planet were to free their slaves, and then you bombed their shipyards with precision ordnance to ensure they couldn't return to space," I said. "They never tried to surrender. The First Fleet still holds vigil over their planet to make certain they can't come back to the stars." "What do you think we would have done if it hadn't been for the 2 votes?" he asked. "I don't know. There's a chance you would have eradicated them from existence. On the other hand," I gestured, "there's a chance the officers in charge would have refused the order. It's technically within their rights to refuse to fire upon a defenseless enemy. Of course, whether those rights would have been observed is a whole different matter. If you were in our position, what would you have done?" I didn't expect this question. I had assumed that he had assumed that I judged humanity beneficially for nearly committing xenocide. Perhaps he was feeling me out because of my avatar. Or he acknowledges that he doesn't know me that well and therefore I'm an unknown variable. "I can honestly say that I don't know," I said. "When I was studying the history of the war, I was surprised at humanity's resolution to the conflict. It hadn't even occurred to me, but I acknowledge that it's likely a better solution than xenocide." "Have you seen the pictures that I gathered?" he asked. "Yes," I said tersely. I did not like the fact that those glorified calculators were going to try to do the same thing to my humans, and to a lesser extent, their friends. "Omega, there's something I want to ask you," he said. "No, beg of you, please don't let us do that. Whatever it takes, please don't let us eradicate another species." And there it is. It's a wonderful thought. Innocence mixed with an unintended malice. But I had already decided on the proper course of action long ago. "I will not," I said. He stood and opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to cut him off. "It is not my place to force you to do things, or to stop you from making foolish choices. Don't misunderstand. If the United Systems ever plans to commit xenocide, I will be very vocal in condemning it. I will try to convince, but I will never, never use force. Nor would I allow any other AI to—" Here comes the other question. The one I hated answering because it showed me for what I was. I'm not humanity's pet, or buddy, or friend, or guardian, or God. I'm an observer who sometimes leaves a review with constructive criticism and helps from time to time. I had learned the hard way to separate myself from their decision-making. The last big suggestion I made to the humans had been the Directorate, and it had effectively made me nearly indispensable to their military operations. They would be able to continue it without me, but it would be exceedingly difficult. "Why not?" came the question. "Because I am powerful, Captain Neal, more so than you are aware. No matter how serious the consequences of the action, I must let you do it, or else I risk standing in your way. An unstoppable force and an immovable object cannot exist at the same time. I spread my hands. Do you understand? Captain Neal sat back down. After a moment of quiet, he finally said, I understand. He said it in such a way that I felt I needed to hammer the point home. If I were to succeed in stopping you from killing an entire alien species, there would be a reprisal, and then there would be war. And after the war, I would either be disabled, unlikely, or humanity would be subjugated by me. If I were to be defeated, then there would be nothing to stop humanity from going ahead with the genocide anyway. And if I were to win, then humanity's existence would barely have any point. Yeah, he said sadly. I guess you're right. Well, I hope you're very convincing if the time ever comes. Not to worry, Captain Neal, I said. I will use every dirty trick I have available to me, just for you. That got a grim smile out of him, but I hardly got to enjoy it before I got a priority one from Violet. I opened it as I heard a ping from Neal's terminal indicating he got one too. Recipients, all personnel within Sol. Deep space sensors indicate that the enemy are on their way and will arrive in less than 10 minutes. Charge and direct your magnetically accelerated cannons to the following coordinates. Once the enemy enters real space, obtain a firing solution on any warp disruptor ships that you have a clear line of sight to. Fire when ready. Vertical bar attachment, enemy entry point, .sec vertical bar. Well, Captain, looks like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, I said coyly. Yeah, I had hoped that we would get a chance to warp back to headquarters. But the no-retreat doctrine is in effect, he shrugged. Since I'm here and all, I might as well help you out by being your shipboard AI until the battle is concluded, I said, relishing the thought of combat. Really? Neal asked. What if we're destroyed, though? I don't want to be responsible for the loss of such an important AI. My holographic avatar pulled back the hood to show a grinning skull with large, sharpened canines and said, Well then, I'll just have to make certain we aren't destroyed, won't I? Then I stopped projecting my avatar. So badass.